Okay, hello everyone. Thank you very much for being here today. Welcome to today's webinar. My name is Stacy Satang with the Housing Alliance of Pennsylvania. Thank you for joining us. Our webinar today is titled PHFA Shares the Implementation Details for New State COVID Relief Mortgage and Rental Assistance Grant Program. To let you all know, this presentation is being recorded and will run approximately 60 minutes, including time for questions and answers. We will also send a link via email to this webinar recording after the holiday, as well as upload it to our YouTube channel and post it on our website. So keep an eye for that next Tuesday likely. Attendees will be muted during the presentation. If you have questions for the presenters, please type them in the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen. If you have a logistical question for myself or other Housing Alliance staff, please use the chat feature. So again, the chat feature should not be used for questions for the presenters. Please put those in the Q&A. And now I'll turn it over to Phyllis Chamberlain to begin today's presentation.
Great, thank you, Stacy, and hello, everyone. Today, we're going to talk about the much anticipated new rental assistance and mortgage relief program for people impacted by the COVID-19 pandemic. We're going to hear from Bryce Maretzki, who's the Director of Policy and Planning for the Pennsylvania Housing Finance Agency, about the details of the program. And then we're also going to hear from 3 individuals who are administering the program at the local level, specifically the rental assistance program, about some of their initial plans for how the program will be administered in their jurisdictions. On May 29th, Governor Wolf signed legislation that allocated $175 million for rental assistance and mortgage relief. This is federal funding that was made available at the federal level through what was called the Coronavirus Relief Fund. And we're really happy that the General Assembly and the governor recognized the incredible need to stabilize both renters and homeowners impacted by COVID-19. PHFA has been working 24/7 to come up with all of the details for the implementation of the program in a really, really short period of time, really less than a month. So we just want to say thank you to Bryce for all that you're doing to make this program successful. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Bryce.
Thank you, Phyllis. It's a pleasure to be with all of you this morning, and thank you to so many of you as partners who help get these resources to PHFA and help the Housing Alliance and so many others to make this happen. It's a pleasure to be partnering with you. I know there are my co-panelists here today are actually really on the front lines of implementing this in a variety of municipalities, in a variety of counties across the Commonwealth. And to them, I have nothing but great thank yous and really wishes, as we begin the program. As Phyllis said, Governor Wolf on May 29th signed what became Act 24 of 2020, which dedicated $175 million to PHFA for a combination of mortgage assistance and rental assistance. The way it's broken up is it's a $25 million for mortgage assistance and a minimum of $150 million for renter assistance, which means that if in fact the mortgage assistance side is not as heavily used and subscribed to, we can in fact move funds from that pot into the rental assistance pot to go above the $150 million. The program, again, is to assist renters and homeowners who have lost a job and had substantial loss of income or had a substantial loss of income greater than 30% since March 1st of 2020 related to the COVID pandemic. The eligibility criteria for the program are you have to be a Pennsylvania resident, either a renter or a borrower, you can be eligible up to a household median income of 100% of the area median income by county. And that median income can be adjusted for the number of persons that are in your household. And so the other criteria is that, again, it has to be income loss of greater than 30% since March 1st of this year. And you have to be able to document that you are either in arrears, at least 30 days in arrears on your mortgage, or at least 30 days behind on your rental payments. The assistance that can be provided on the rental side, it is up to $750 per person, per lessee, again, based on eligibility, for a maximum of 6 months, so a total of $4,500. On the mortgage assistance side, the way we have structured it is we're agreeing to cover the up to $1,000 per mortgage for the first and second mortgage. So a total of $2,000 or $12,000 total, again, for the 6-month period. Applications are open on Monday, July 6th. And on the rental side, that means all 67 counties will have an entity that will be taking applications either electronically or by mail beginning Monday, July 6th. The application is actually already available on our website and many of our county partners' websites for the rental assistance side, as well as the mortgage assistance side. The mortgage assistance applications will all be coming to PHFA, and we will be reviewing those in-house. The rental assistance applications will all go to the county entities for review, processing, ultimately approval, and payouts to the landlords on behalf of the renters. The other important piece of note about the legislation is that landlords may also apply on behalf of a tenant, and a lender may apply on behalf of a borrower. If in fact that does happen, there are applications that all the applications require sort of a collaboration between the lender and the borrower, and or the lessee and the landlord. So you can't just, the landlord can't just randomly apply on behalf of a group of tenants. There has to be a collaboration between the tenants, and there are a package of documents that are required from both parties to be able to qualify for the program. Again, the application window opens on Monday, July 6th. It closes. The last day for applications is September 30th of this year, and the last date that funds will be paid is November 30th of this year. We are required between November 30th and the end of the calendar year to produce a final report on the outcomes for the program to the legislature and the governor's office by the end of the year. On the rental assistance side, again, as I mentioned, we have a partner entity in all 67 counties. On our website is a listing of every county entity and all their website, their mailing address, their email address, their contact information. All that information is available on PHFA's website. And so if you go there to phfa.cares.org, you can find all that information and see the links, see the application. Again, there's a renter application, there's a landlord application, and there actually is a landlord attestation statement that's required from the landlord that the property meets housing quality standards. On the rental side, there are a number of stipulations in order to qualify. Again, You have to be able to prove that you've lost 30% of your income when you apply between pre-March 1st, and we will be looking at from January 1st through March 1st in terms of pre-March 1st income, and then post-March 1st. At time of application is when you would be looking at the income of your current income at time of application is the income that we will be using to document income. And again, you can find each county's median area income on our website, as well as each county website. They will have that information as well. And it will be, again, adjusted for household size. If a landlord agrees to accept these funds, and again, it's a maximum of $750, no matter what, up to, that's the maximum. So if the rent is $1,000 and the landlord agrees to accept the $750 on behalf of a tenant, they cannot ask for additional payment of unpaid rent. It has to be in payment for the full rent for the period of time that they are taking the assistance. And for after the last assistance, they have to agree for 60 days that they will not evict the tenant following the last payment. And again, so if they take a payment in November, on November 30th, they will be not eligible to begin any evictions until at least the end of January 30th, for any unpaid rent, again, as part of the participation in this program. Again, the property must meet housing quality standards, and the landlord must provide documentation, must make a statement that in fact it does that. The landlord must also certify that they do not have any unpaid property taxes or other taxes. We don't have any way of sort of on the front end verifying that, but we are asking each landlord to attest that they are current on all their taxes, with penalties if in fact we find that they have done something against that. We also there was a quick revision based on a lot of feedback. We have agreed to include oral leases as well as written leases as a part of the program now. The initial set of guidelines that people may have seen very quickly on Monday morning when the applications were available did not include an oral lease provision. We have now included an oral lease provision. There will need to be documentation and identification of residency provided by the tenant. So whether it's a canceled check or a driver's license, a pay stub, something that documents that they are in fact that is their residency, and then a statement from the landlord as well in their application. But we are willing to accept oral leases as well as written leases. On the mortgage assistance side, again, we are willing to cover the first two mortgages in the first position or in the second position. And so, again, up to $1,000 per mortgage. So a total of $2,000, again, for a maximum of 6 months, for a total of $12,000 on the mortgage assistance side. Those applications are also available on our website, and the applications will be coming directly to PHFA to us for the program. The county entities will all be, one of the provisions of the legislation is that each person who applies, each lessee who applies, we must verify their information, whether they say they are unemployed or not. After March 1st, we are going to run everybody's name through the Department of Labor and Industries unemployment verification system. So once a week, each of the county entities will be sending to PHFA a list of all applicants, their first name, their last name, and their social security number. That information to the Department of Labor and Industry at the end of the week, and hopefully get that turned around from the Department of Labor and Industry quickly in terms of the verification of that information about unemployment. And then we will send that information back out to the counties to continue processing each application. Again, the payments from there, if an application is approved, payments would be made to the landlord on behalf of the tenant, either back rent, if there is back rent due and there was a and they had not been paying back rent, they can cover back rent back to March 1st, and they can pay rent going forward. Again, it can be only a total of 6 months maximum to the maximum monthly amount of $750. So that's also the other requirement of the county entities is that they will be providing us monthly data about the number of applications, the number of approvals, and the amount of payout that they are making on a monthly basis. Again, that's our way of sort of keeping track of the statewide sort of impact of the program and making sure that we can provide funds to each of the county entities to continue their operations and track the program on an ongoing basis each month. So we will be asking each entity monthly to be providing program outcome data to us for the previous month. So that's sort of the big picture overview. As I've been sort of talking through this, I see that there's already lots of questions, and I'm happy to begin taking those. I know Phyllis was going to sort of work her way through them. Some of them are probably multiple questions related to the same one. Again, our website has lots and lots of information, and we will continue to be populating it with additional information, a frequently asked question document, you know, the application material, the program guidelines, the county contact information are all available. The area median income information is all available on our website. And so we would really encourage people to go to the website, use that resource as your first line of information. We do have a call center, and we do have people available if they have specific questions, but we will be really asking people to contact their county of residency and the entity that is responsible for taking applications in their county as the first place they go if they have questions about their particular application. So again, I'm happy to take additional questions, you know, and we can work from there. But that really covers the main points about the eligibility and criteria for the program.
Great, thanks, Bryce. So as Bryce said, PHFA does have all of the information that you need on their website, and I did put a link to the website with, if you follow the link that I put in the chat, you can find information on both the rental assistance program and the mortgage relief program. But we're going to take some time to have Bryce answer some of these questions. And Bryce, I recognize that some of these questions might be more appropriate for the local administering agency. And so obviously you'll feel free to say that if that's the case.
Absolutely.
So the first question, there have been a few questions about the fact that renters are eligible for several months of assistance.
Yep.
And this particular question is, do you envision that renters will have to apply only once?
Yeah.
And also a follow-up to that is how will that play out in real life in terms of ongoing delinquencies and the duration of the program through the end of November? So it's really about how will people be able to access the total maximum amount of assistance if that's what's needed?
Yeah. So this is a question that we've gotten a lot, and we are sort of continuing to refine. I'm not sure we fully thought through all of the implications of this when we were sort of scurrying to get all the pieces in place. What we are saying is that at time of application and at time of approval, we can pay back rent that can be documented that was unpaid, again, up to the $750, and a total of 6 months. So if there's 2 months of back rent that you needed, $500 each month for May and June, or April and May, we can pay that, as well as at time of application and approval, we will assume you will continue to be eligible for the program going forward for the maximum period of time. So again, if it's 2 months going backwards, you have 4 months going forward to continue to receive the assistance for the maximum of 6 months of total assistance. Again, at the max, if you qualify for the maximum of $750. But again, it will all be determined based on your initial application and your initial approval at the time of submission of your application. We will assume you will continue to be meeting the test of income loss, the 30% income loss, and being behind on your rent at time of application approval. So you will not have to apply every month to continue to be eligible for the program.
Great. You had highlighted the fact that both a renter in need of assistance, but also a landlord who has a renter in need of assistance could apply. So this question is about, does the renter and the landlord both need to fill out documents, or can it be just one or the other that applies?
Yeah, so they really will both need to fill out the separate applications, and ideally we would get 3 documents together, whether it's the landlord submitting on behalf of the tenant or the tenant submitting themselves. There are really 3 documents. The renter must provide their application, and if a landlord is applying on behalf of a tenant, they would fill out that information for the tenant, but the tenant must know and must certify and must qualify. It is based on the qualification of the tenant, the person on the lease. It is not based on the landlord. So the package will include 3 application pieces, that being the renter's application, the landlord's application, and the landlord certification of housing quality standards. Those are the 3 formal applications that we would ideally we will need to see for every application. Again, who fills it out on behalf of whom, in some ways doesn't matter. All 3 of those pieces will need to be in the file in order to move forward with review and approval of a complete application.
And I just want to follow up for clarity's sake. That means that a landlord has to be communicating with the tenant.
Correct.
That the landlord knows that this assistance is available and recommends that the tenant apply.
Yep. And the tenant would have to sign off that, they agree that, they're okay with that. And again, the landlord would have to agree that upon accepting it, that is payment in full for the months that they are receiving it, and cannot go back to the tenant for any additional unpaid rent.
Okay. The next question is about both the mortgage program and the rental assistance program. Do tenants need to show that they have overcome their hardship to make ongoing mortgage or rental payments going forward?
No. I mean, I guess the answer is really no. I mean, we will assume, again, if you qualify, if you met the hardship, the 30% loss test at the beginning of, at the application time, and you can show that you were 30 days delinquent or late on your rent at time of application, we will assume that you will continue to qualify. But we don't necessarily need to see document. If you run out of money at the end of the program and you come to the end of the program and you aren't going to be able to make payments beyond that, we will not be able, that will not be part of the factoring of the application at the front end.
Okay.
I think that's your question, right? So we won't be evaluating somebody's ongoing financial capacity post receipt of assistance. What we will be doing at the front end is we will be looking at all sources of income. So if you, in fact, you have to be able to document pre and post sort of March 1st incomes and show a loss of 30%. If you've received unemployment, in some cases that unemployment may in fact make you ineligible for the program because it may in fact put you above the 30% reduction in income requirement. So there's a little bit of a catch there. So we will be looking at all income, both pre and post, including any supplemental unemployment compensation you might be receiving, and including Section 8 and other forms of assistance that you may be receiving as well. That's all part of the evaluations for application assistance.
Okay. Can you review again what types of evidence will be needed for loss of income?
Yeah, so it can be really many forms. It can be a W-2. It could be a bank statement. It could be a tax form. It could be a statement, a signed statement. You know, if somebody who sort of works in a kind of more of a gig kind of position, you know, they may in fact need to show a bank statement that here's what I deposited in my bank account pre-March 1st, and here's what I was able to deposit post-March 1st, and here's a statement attesting for my reduction in wages. If they have a letter from their employer saying, I've reduced your wages or your hours by 10 hours a week, you know, since March 1st, you can provide that. There are many, I mean, we are pretty flexible in terms of allowing any documents that the applicant can provide either on the mortgage side or on the rental side to show that they have lost the 30% of their income. And it's 30% of their gross income, not their net income. I know that question has come in a couple of times as well.
Okay. Next question is, are applications first come, first serve? And then there's a follow-up. If yes, how are you prioritizing those who might need it most, but might struggle to complete applications or get necessary documentation?
It is first come, first serve. You know, the more complete your application is at the front end, the quicker, you know, you'll be able to get through get through the entire process. But we are asking county entities and on the rental side, and we will be looking at it from the mortgage side. First come, first serve, based on completeness of application, verification by labor and industry, all documents, you know, meet the criteria. There's a checklist that we have for each of the programs in terms of all the things that will need to be looked at and verified. And then, you know, once approval's made, but we don't have the ability to say you're more worthy of assistance than somebody else. We're assuming that everybody who applies starts off at the same sort of point.
Great. Next question is, how are the funds being divided among the 67 counties?
Yeah, good question. So we looked at two factors in coming up with really what's an initial estimate of funds that we will be providing to the county entities. The two factors that we looked at are the percentage of renter households that are housing burdened, that being paying more than 30% of their income for housing, and two, the percent of renter households that have household income below $50,000 of total household income. We took those two factors, looked at percentage in each county of those two factors, and then sort of ran it against the total, the $150 million pot. And that provided us really only with a starting point for giving the initial tranche of funds to the county entities. And then each county entity monthly will be giving us program reporting, and we will then give them, based on their performance, how many applications came in, how many they approved, and how much they paid. We will then give them the next sort of tranche. We will evaluate that information and give them the next tranche of funds for the program. Again, there's nothing magical about saying Dauphin County doesn't necessarily have $3 million just set aside for it. It is a statewide program, and ultimately, if there is greater need in one place and less need in another place, we have the ability, again, based on monthly review of program outcome data, to look at moving funds around to make sure that we use up all the money and that we don't leave any unspent, and to also ensure that a couple of counties don't get it all and use it quickly, and therefore other places may not have funds available to them. So it's kind of a little bit of a balancing test to make sure that we have funds available across the state and that we don't run out, that we use all the funds by the end of the time period.
Okay, thanks. The next question is about whether or not this rental assistance can be combined with other rental assistance programs, such as the Emergency Solutions Grant.
So the answer to that is it could be combined on the front end. We would encourage any other assistance to go in before you put in these funds. Once a landlord agrees to accept the rental relief program funds, that is for full rent. They cannot get any additional rent. They will have agreed to have the entire rent covered by acceptance of this. Even if the rent's, $1,000 and the max payment's only $750, they agree they accept that $750 in full payment. So we would encourage any other assistance that might go to a landlord or a tenant to go in on the front end and help at that point prior to application and acceptance of these funds, because that becomes an agreement for full rent as long as it's being received. Same on the mortgage side. Is
there an inspection process for the housing quality standards, or just landlord verification?
Landlord, it's a landlord verification statement. Yeah, we don't have we couldn't impose that. That's just a level of administrative responsibility that we just couldn't cover. So.
Okay. Next question is this available for roomers? So I think Bryce may be talking about whether or not you have to have a written lease might apply here.
Yeah. So yes, it is available potentially for somebody who is in a room, has a room. Again, the oral lease provision is probably what you would need. That would be what you would follow, as long as you have an ID or some form of verification that is your address. Then you would qualify for the program still.
And then this question we may have already addressed, but I think it's actually worth asking again because it has to do with whether or not the 750 will be enough to cover someone's full rent. So can individual agencies cover the remaining amount with funds from other programs within the agency?
Not once the rent relief funds have been accepted by the landlord. Again, they can, if they want to assist the landlord at the front end before before these funds are accepted, they can do that. But the legislation is clear, and our legal interpretation of it is upon acceptance of the rent relief program funds, it is payment in full for that month's rent.
Okay. The next question is about landlord participation. If the landlord applies without participation of the landlord, do the housing quality standards requirements still apply? So I'd ask in answering that question, maybe if you can clarify, how does the landlord need to participate?
The landlord's pretty much required to participate. I mean, a tenant can apply, but until an application is not complete, until the landlord submits information about housing quality standards, submits information on essentially their piece of the application has to also be included because we need to have landlord information. We need to know where to send the check. We need to have some verifications of statement. They have to sign some certifications. So an application, a tenant can apply, but until the landlord completes their component, or the tenant can complete it on behalf of the landlord and then ask the landlord to sign it and make the attestations and provide the additional documents that are required, and then the tenant can submit it. But that complete package must be on file for a full review of the assistance.
Okay.
And that's that's the way the legislation, because both were they were tied together sort of in the legislation. That was the only way we could figure out how to handle it administratively.
Okay. Will immigration status affect qualification for both programs?
We don't ask about citizenship status, but we do require Social Security numbers of every applicant.
Okay. I think you already addressed this, but again, I think worth repeating. What is considered income? Is it unemployment stimulus checks?
Yes.
Does that count?
Yes. Any income, any income that has been received, it doesn't just have to be earned. It could be passive income. It could be a stimulus check. It could be an unemployment compensation check, a pandemic unemployment, the additional pandemic unemployment assistance. All that would need to be included in the income side of the evaluation of the application.
Okay. How long will the process take to get a payment to the landlord?
Good question. It's a little hard to know until really the program starts and we see how long. The big challenge will be knowing quite how long it's going to take L&I to do the verification piece of it. Ideally, so here's our perfect world scenario, is that each county will submit a list on Thursday, by the end of the day on Thursday of each week. They will submit a list of all first name, last name, and Social Security notes for everybody who applied in that week. So on July 10th, we will get the first set of lists from everybody who applied starting July 6th. We will create one master's list from all 67 lists and send that to L&I on Friday. And we are hoping that L&I will be able to to run those Social Security numbers through their verification process over the weekend. We think they will be. And we would then get that list back on Monday and break it apart into 67 individual lists, get it back out to the counties by first thing Tuesday morning. And as soon as that verification's done, then they can move on to, you know, if all other pieces of the application are complete, the payments can begin by that next day. And we're hoping that as many, we can do all of this by wire. All the data will be done electronically, but we're hoping that payments can be made from the county entities to the landlords through ACH rather than through paper checks. But we know in some cases, in fact, there will have to be paper checks, which could slow it down a little bit. So again, we're hoping that a week to 10 days would be the time, maybe shorter, once we get sort of the whole process moving on a, you know, going. I think the first week or so may be a little slower as we work out some of the kind of initial hiccups, but we're hoping that as the weeks go by, we can move faster and faster in terms of getting those approvals through.
There have been a few questions asking about whether the eligibility is per person or per household, and specifically people are asking if it's up to $750 per month, is that per household, or could it be two people in one household?
Well, it depends. So if the two people, if there are two lessees on it depends on who's on the lease. Everybody who applies must be a lessee. They must be able have signed the lease or have an oral agreement to be on the lease, have some sort of identification that this is their address, have some verification that they are on the lease. So it is by lessee. So if there are two unrelated people, two people that, you know, are unrelated, that both sign the lease, share the apartment, they both can apply, and they both will be considered individually for assistance up to the total amount of rent. So if the rent is $1,000 a month and they each pay $500, the maximum they would receive is $500 a piece. Again, if the rent is $2,000 a month, they could each receive the maximum of $750. If the two persons that are both on the lease are married, they are counted as one household for purposes of income. And so again, they would only be able to apply for $750 as one unit, because their income would be considered combined. And so there is a bit of what we've characterized essentially as a marriage penalty in the program, because we're looking at combined income for married couples as a household unit versus who's on the lease as individual lessees that are unrelated to roommates that are on the lease. So it is, again, that was the way we interpreted the legislation, and we think we're pretty clear on that was what was written into the legislation.
Okay. Is the rental assistance available to an individual that has a HUD Section 8 voucher?
It would, yes, it would be. Again, they would have to show that they've lost the income. They would have to show their Section 8 voucher as additional sort of supplemental income to cover their rent. And they would have to be able to show that they are in fact in arrears on their rent. But there's nothing that precludes a Section 8 or public housing resident from applying.
Okay. There are a few questions about people who were behind on rent prior to March 1st for other reasons, but then have had something related to COVID-19 happen in terms of employment loss. And I think actually these questions reflect the complicated situations that will come up, right? So could you just clarify the eligibility related to COVID-19?
Yeah, so we're assuming any income loss or unemployment post March 1 is COVID related. That is the operating assumption, that's sort of the bright line of COVID versus non-COVID. Pre-March 1 is non-COVID, post-March 1 is COVID. And so again, you will need to show that after March 1st, between pre-March 1st and post-March 1st, you lost 30% of your income. If your rent was you weren't paying your rent pre-March 1st, the program can't go back to before March 1st. That would not be considered pandemic related rent arrears. Any rent arrears post March 1st, we are going to assume is related to your loss of income or other pandemic related deficits in being able to pay rent. So again, January and February, if you're 30 days late, we can't use the CARES funds for that. It can only be post March 1st.
Okay. If someone is not eligible for unemployment compensation, can they still apply even though they won't be in the system?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Yeah. You don't have to, yes, absolutely. You can document loss of income lots of other ways. Unemployment is not the only way to show. The test is the loss of income. The test is the 30% loss of income. The labor and industry verification is really a secondary check to make sure that anybody who has claimed unemployment compensation is in the system. But to make sure that there's no we've covered the broad nature of the legislation, we are going to run every Social Security number through the system. For many people, it may come back that they're not even in the system because they never have applied for unemployment, and they'll have to verify the loss of income by some other means, right? By their wage statements, their bank statements, reduced out number of hours, other ways of showing the income loss. It's really the test is the income loss. Unemployment might be one path to that reduced income.
Okay, great. So we're going to hear from 3 individuals who work for the agencies that are administering the rental assistance program at the local level. Before we do that, Bryce, can you just repeat who people should contact for questions about the rental assistance and the mortgage relief programs?
Yeah, so come to phfa.org. You will see a big red banner on the front of our website that says CARES program, and you can click through there. There's a link that says renter assistance, and there's a link that says mortgage assistance. That will give you lots of information about the programs. On the rental assistance side, we would really encourage you immediately to contact your whatever county you reside in. Contact the county contact the county entity on that list, and talk to them about their process. And I mean, again, it should be uniform. The application is uniform across the Commonwealth. There's only one application, but we would encourage specific questions to go back to the counties to really address. We don't have the capacity to answer thousands of telephone calls from renters asking particular questions. We're really asking the counties to help field some of those questions. So when you come to our website, we will kind of try and move you to your county entity based on your residency. I hope that helps. And the mortgage side, again, you will apply, you will see information about application, you will come to us with your application material on the mortgage side, and we will review it.
Great. Thanks, Bryce. This is
You're
a lot
welcome.
of detail that you worked out in a very short period of time. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you all.
All right. So as Bryce had indicated, the program is going to be administered at the county level. Everyone has worked really quickly to figure out a lot of details. I'm sure that not everything has been worked out, but we at the Housing Alliance invited 3 individuals just to talk briefly about their plans for implementation, to hopefully give ideas to all the other organizations that will be implementing at the local level. And first, we're going to hear from Justin Eby, who's with the Lancaster County Redevelopment Authority. Justin?
There we go. Got the share, but didn't get the mic. Thank you, Phyllis, for asking me to participate today. Again, Justin Eby with the Lancaster County Housing and Redevelopment Authorities. We are the lead entity in Lancaster County. So again, Phyllis mentioned we got to kind of scramble, get this together over the last 2 weeks. This is, again, going to be ever evolving, as I made a couple extra notes that we've now got to go back and look at our initial process that we set up per some of Bryce's clarifying information. So what we did was, with the tenant and landlord application that comes to us, we're going to do the initial vetting. We have a Dropbox, we have a dedicated email address, we have obviously our fax, our mail, that they can get the application to us. We can do, make sure it's completed, that it has all the required documentation. We administer the voucher program with our housing authority, the CDBG and ESG funds with the redevelopment authority. So we can kind of take a look at the requirements, kind of be that first step to make sure we're following the program and the legislation. We'll have the direct correspondence with PHFA on the verification with L&I, and as well as the reporting requirements that Bryce talked about. What we did then was our staff is kind of busy with the other CARES dollars. Our housing authority is making the adjustments on incomes of our 800 some voucher tenants. So what we thought was appropriate was to also contract with a housing provider, Tabor Community Services, and perhaps Lancaster Housing Opportunity Partnership as well, because we had already set aside, county and city, $800,000 of CDBG for rental assistance. That also included about $300,000 combined for eviction prevention through ESG. We also realized this is going to be heavily on case management, so a portion of any administrative fees that we can get out of this program we'll be passing along to them as well. Again, there's a lot of questions of how do we keep up with income changes in the future, how we do get enough information, pay stubs and other information. So really, when we pass this forward, it's just a completed application. The real case management application income review will be done by these housing providers. They are going to be required to enter all information into Empower Lancaster, which is driven by our Homeless Coalition. That will enable us to be able to look at who was getting assistance, help us with reporting, and make sure we're not duplicating efforts with our CDBG and ESG funding. Additionally, again, you have to verify. So if someone submits to you and they're submitting for the last couple months, that's one thing. But if they're submitting for this month, we got to continue verifying in the next couple months that their income is still 30% less than what it was originally. So having that ongoing coordination with the case manager and the leasee and landlord is very important. When everything gets approved, then we will be, the redevelopment authority will be sending the landlords either direct deposit or check. I have a feeling that a lot of the landlords will already be in our system because of our housing authority. Additionally, some of the outreach that we're doing, website, we've gotten a huge volume of hits over the last 4 days. A lot of increased calls. Yeah, a lot of people just trying to find out if they qualify. I know we've even had tenants of our housing authority call to see if they qualify. We plan on reaching out to our landlords, with 350 landlords in our housing authority, working with the Homeless Coalition, who's already on the level of outreach with school districts and other entities. And then I can't stress enough that we have a great network of housing providers, eviction prevention network, that we have hubs throughout the whole county that are able to provide some of this case management. Applications, we're already receiving them, even though July 6th is the date. We have 6 as of, I last checked, around 10 a.m. None of the applications were completed properly. We're seeing that the leasee is just providing their information and not communicating with the landlord. So there's going to be a lot of outreach from our staff to make sure that information, again, is all together before we send it off to the housing provider. 750 will only fully cover 2 of the applicants that have submitted already, and that's because they're 1-bedroom apartments. We're seeing double or 3 times the amount for 750. So our plan is, again, using that first case management with Tabor as being able to triage the applicant as far as, can we get the CDBG and ESG in to help get them whole? And then at that point, do they qualify for this funding through PHFA in the state, that we can then, the 750 will make them whole. Say they have a $1,000 rent. We have 250 coming from CDBG and the remaining coming from the PHFA program. So again, it's going to be a lot of work working with our landlords, with Tabor, and trying to figure this out just like everyone else. So I appreciate the 3 minutes that I got to speak on this.
Great, thanks, Justin. Next, we're going to hear from Joshua Walker with the Pocono Mountains United Way.
Thanks, Phyllis, and just thank you for the opportunity to be here today and to Housing Alliance of PA. And it's also great just to sit through this again. I did sit through a couple webinars with Bryce, and be able to hear as much information as possible is always great. And to hear what some of the other counties are doing and how they're implementing it from Justin and Tim is also great. So let me just quickly share this PowerPoint here. All right, hopefully, can everybody see that? Can you guys see that? Okay, good. All right, so just quickly running through, I anticipated that Bryce would cover a lot of the details of the program, and just kind of the same way Justin and Tim are probably going to do it. Just briefly jump into how we are implementing it on the county level, and just some things that I have thought through that we'll probably all experience. So again, my name is Joshua Walker, and I work with Pocono Mountains United Way here in Monroe County, and we are administering this rent relief program. A couple of things that I thought about as far as the administration of this program is the efficiency, of course, the marketing, as even Justin had mentioned, and then some of the challenges that we're going to face and maybe some of the solutions to those challenges. This is in no way an exhaustive list. It's just kind of a brief points that we might all experience. So for efficiency, the application tracking process, I think, is what I've been spending most of my time thinking about. If you don't have, there are a lot of information management systems out there and software and database software. If you don't have that, I'm finding, Excel works just fine. I built like a quick Excel sheet day one, and it's just going to have a lot of the information that we're going to need to provide for the weekly reports and the monthly reports. So thank God I'll have like a co-worker who will actually assist me with that, pulling the data off of the applications, entering it into this Excel sheet. I'll probably have different tabs for each month so I can track it. I'm also going to make sure that the Excel sheet corresponds with digital folders. So, my plan, kind of like I love that flow chart that Justin had. The plan is, as soon as you receive the application, as soon as we get it, And of course, they're coming in email. Some of them are going to come in through mail, and some of them might will get dropped off at our office. I want to make sure that they all get scanned, of course, immediately as a PDF. So there's a digital copy of that stamped. Make sure that it's stamped as specifically what date it came in, so you can kind of prove that. And then making sure that I'm actually going to have like the digital folders on my computer that correspond with the columns in my Excel sheet, if that makes sense. So as soon as there'll be like an applications received column and a folder on my computer. Once that information is entered into Excel, then it'll jump over to like applications being processed folder and a column. I'll be able to check it and track it on that Excel sheet, just so I know where everything is and how often it's moving. I mean, this could be hundreds of applications, so I definitely don't just want a big pile on my desk and trying to follow it along. I definitely have, so whatever system works for you, whatever control systems works for you. Of course, having hard copy folders, hard copy files and folders as a backup, I think is a big plus, since I believe, and I don't know if Bryce is still living, but or still listening, but I believe he mentioned that we need to save these records until March 31st, I believe was the date, March 31st of 2023. So make sure you have some hard copy folders and backup somewhere. Was that correct, Bryce? Okay, yeah, so March.
Yes, it is. I'm sorry. Absolutely.
Yeah.
March
Okay.
March 30th of 2023.
Okay, right. So make sure you have the hard copy backups, and as well as I would have digital copies. And then of course, staff communication. You know, you might have, depending on how many people are processing this, like we'll have a different staff person who checks the mail, different staff person who's actually getting the calls into the office, and so on and so forth. So whoever is maybe touching some of the applications, making sure you're communicating as well. You know, you don't, last thing you want is September 29th and you have an application sitting somewhere and you know, somebody forgot about it. Marketing, very, you know, similar list to what Justin had, but just anything and everything that you can touch in your county, get it out there. I would try to have a clear and consistent message, and try to make up some of your own promotional material. All the information is on PHFA's website. You can pull out the, you know, the fact sheets and the program guidelines and kind of make your own promotional material. We're going to have at least, I'd say, you know, 3 flyers and some postcard size JPEGs that you can share on social media, send to your offices. I'm going to have a Zoom later on. If you haven't reached out and connected with some of your legislative offices, your state reps and your state senators, I definitely do that. That's a plus. I'm going to have a Zoom later on, actually in a couple hours, with those offices, just to make sure we're sharing the same information, that they're probably going to get a lot of calls as well. Any email lists, you know, churches, schools, things like that, your website, make sure you can get that up there. I did see, I think, a comment in the chat that said, you know, can we have some of that information on our website as well? And I do remember Bryce had mentioned you can pull those PDFs and put them on your own website. So we actually have it on our website. If you want to take a look at the website we have, it's PoconoUnitedWay.org/rent. It's PoconoUnitedWay.org/rent, and we have our own kind of page there dedicated with all the information, and we actually have the application links there as well. So any way you can market this, I think will definitely help. Just a few challenges that I was thinking through, like what's everybody going to face? I mean, this is a new program. It's unprecedented times, as we keep hearing. I think PHFA is doing a great job just getting this together based on the legislation. So with the landlord, and I've already had some conversations with some landlords, I think maybe some of the challenges up front is just the relationship that they have with the tenant. Maybe if it's a tenant that is habitually late with rent, but now they actually have an excuse, and so maybe the relationship is already a little strained. I know some landlords who, according to their tenants, and I still have to reach out, but according to the tenants, you know, some landlords just don't want to be necessarily bothered. Maybe it's a lot of paperwork to fill out, and you know, they don't want to have to go hunting and searching for things like that. And not everybody. I know there's a lot of landlords on here now. I saw some of the questions they were throwing in there. But also, I think the biggest thing that maybe we'll see, and I saw some of those questions, is just the frustration with the $750 maximum. And that, as Bryce said, is in the legislation. The landlords have to sign the form. If you take a look at the landlord application, attesting that they will receive the $750 as maximum payment, no matter how much the payment of rent is each month, and that they can't go after the tenant. They can't pursue the tenant for any difference in that rent. And so that's just something that might be a challenge for a lot of us. The renter, I think some of the challenges is just mistaking it for a rebate program. I did have a conversation with a renter who said that they, they borrowed some money from their friend to pay their rent, and so they're glad that this program exists so that they can pay their friend back. And I said, well, that's not exactly how it works. It's not a rebate program. It's not a refund. It's just to pay outstanding rent payments. To make outstanding rent payments, it could be backdated from March until now, or also future rent payments up to 6 months only. And then, of course, the organization that you're in, or even also your own personal organization, just backlog, doing everything you can to make sure you're processing as quickly as possible. Applications are coming in, and you have some good system to scan it and date it and have it sitting somewhere in some queue, because you could have, depending on the need of your county, you could have hundreds of applications coming in, maybe more than that. So definitely keeping a good system. Hopefully there's no delay with labor and industry with the verification. I know Bryce said that the process should be pretty streamlined as long as we get all our information entered. I think it was Thursday before 5 p.m. We need to get that in. So as long as we have all that in, they're just waiting for them to get back. And then again, just communication with your staff, communication with the tenants and the landlords, responding to the calls as quickly as possible. So those are some of the challenges. And I did talk about some of the solutions already. Just being able to have maybe that phone conversation is going to be a lot of time on your part, but if you have some assistants in your office, just having those conversations sometimes with the landlords. I've already talked to several. It's just a 5 to 10 minute conversation. They have specific questions. They want to be reassured. Also, sort of letting them know, in a nice way, $750, even though that is the maximum, it definitely is better than zero. So at least it can make up for some of the past rent that they were not receiving and going forward. And again, it's just temporary. This is a temporary fix to try to help the tenants kind of get back on their feet. After that, of course, we're not asking landlords to reduce the rent indefinitely. It's just for this program. And then also just having some information, some ideas, here at United Way, we have a lot of programs, but also the mortgage assistance program and other programs that exist that maybe we can refer the landlords to, that they may be more previously unaware of. And then just quickly, these last couple of things, the rental, like I said, clear marketing communication, just so they know exactly what this program is and how it works, just promptly and accurately responding to the inquiries. If any, just like Justin said, we've gotten, even though we can't process the applications, we have received a number. And I do notice, they come in bits and pieces. Like first we get the application, then we get some of the documentation, then we get some more documentation. So just making sure that they understand, get it in as soon as possible, definitely before September 30th. And then just that last part, just, consistency, streamlining the process, and any assistance that you can get. I know that PHFA has made some funds available, administrative funds. So definitely looking at that and looking what your budget is to see if you can hire, can you hire an intern? Can you hire, a quick assistant or part-time assistant to help you with some of the processing? So those are just some of the things that I had thought of and thought through.
Great, thanks. Next, we're going to hear from Tim Whelan with the Cumberland County Housing and Redevelopment Authorities.
Thank you, Phyllis. Thank you for the opportunity to participate. I hope everybody can hear me okay. The first thing I'd like to mention in this is I think we all owe a great deal of appreciation to the Housing Alliance of Pennsylvania, because if it wasn't for a lot of efforts by Phyllis and many others, this rent relief program wouldn't even be in existence today. It was a result of a lot of their advocacy on a part of a number of legislators, that we do have this important resource to help our renters cope with COVID-19 here in our communities. So thank you, Phyllis, for all you did to make this possible. I won't sort of repeat exactly what Justin and Joshua have talked about here, but let me just point out that first off, we're going to be working to make sure that our program is fully and completely consistent with the guidelines of PHFA to make sure that it's compliant with the enabling legislation. So issues with regards to application, review, eligibility, and the like, we know that at some point there will be quite a bit of auditing There will be quite a bit of monitoring that will come after this. So we are gearing up right from the front to make sure that all of our work is consistent with PHFA. We'll also want to make sure that we're fully consistent with all of the other counties as they're tackling this program. We are going to be handling this in-house. We've put together a special team of experienced housing representatives, case managers, administrative assistants, and our organizational leadership to drive this particular program going forward. As with all of us, there is a big guess as to how many applications we expect to receive. We really have no idea how many applications we're going to be receiving. We're also fully expecting that many of the applications, when they do come in to us, especially early on in the process, will be just like Justin pointed out. The application is incomplete. The application from the landlord hasn't been received. So we know there's going to be a lot of confusion early on about, I submitted my application. And so communicating with the applicants, both as renters and as landlords, we know is going to be very important and will be quite the challenge, especially early on when we start getting many of these applications coming in. The last thing is we recognize, as you saw with all of the questions going to Bryce earlier, there are lots of questions about program implementation, eligibility, and the like. We are fully expecting that there's going to be lots of stops and goes, retracing of steps, retracing of applications. We know this will probably have a very slow, and at times it'll probably be considered very painful by both the renter applications, landlords, and ourselves, as this is somewhat of a painful process as we all get in, get moving, and try to make this program work, because we know that COVID-19 has been very disruptive on so many different fronts. We know that COVID-19 is going to be with us for quite the foreseeable future. But we also are very appreciative that this resource will at least try to bring some relief to renters and landlords. And so it was on that basis of the need in our community why we chose to take this on right from the get-go. So I realize we're over time here, Phyllis. So I'll just end my remarks right there, and we're looking forward to participating and making this relief available just as quickly as I can in our community.
Great, thank you, Bryce, Justin, Joshua, and Tim. If you represent an organization that's going to be administering this program locally, I know that this is a huge undertaking in a very short period of time. If you would be interested in connecting with other organizations that are administering this program, we at the Housing Alliance would be happy to serve as that convener. So if you're interested, just email me directly, phyllis@housingalliancepa.org. There are a lot of questions that we just didn't have time to answer today. We at the Housing Alliance will do our best to answer those questions. I will redirect you back to PHFA's website. There is a lot of really good information that answers a lot of questions that people have. So again, just thank you to PHFA and to all the organizations, including the 3 with representatives on this panel today that are going to be administering this program. There is a ton of need. We all know that. There was a ton of need before the pandemic, but this program is really focused on making sure that households who were struggling before don't fall further behind. I also just want to mention that the statewide eviction moratorium does expire in Pennsylvania on July 10th, and we're asking people to call the governor to ask that be extended. The eviction moratorium was a really important step to keep people from losing their homes and being having to search for housing at a time when people really need to stay home to socially distance and reduce their risk of contracting the virus. But the timing of the resources becoming available is really tricky, and we'd like to see that eviction moratorium be extended for a little bit more time to give time for the resources that are available to get to people in need. So thanks, everyone. I hope everyone has a good 4th of July holiday. Thank you.